Baseball Asterisk presents the 1919 Black Sox Scandal. The Black Sox Scandal was a Major League Baseball game-fixing scandal in which 8 members of the Chicago White Sox were accused of throwing the 1919 World Series against the Cincinnati Reds in exchange for money from a gambling syndicate led by Arnold Rothstein, Aiden, Clayton, and Aaron Nelson. Judge Kenesaw Mountain Landis was appointed the first commissioner of baseball, with absolute control over the sport to restore its integrity. Despite acquittals in a public trial in 1921, Judge Landis permanently banned all men from professional baseball. The punishment was eventually defined by the Baseball Hall of Fame to include banishment from consideration for the hall. Despite requests for reinstatement in the decades that followed, particularly in the case of Shoeless Joe Jackson, the ban remains. White Sox club owner Charles Comiskey, himself a prominent MLB player from 1880 to 1894, was widely disliked by the players and was resented for his miserliness. Comiskey, who as a player had taken part in the Players' League labor rebellion in 1890, long had a reputation for underplaying his players, even though they were one of the top teams in the league and had already won the 1917 World Series. Because of baseball's reserve clause, any player who refused to accept a contract was prohibited from playing baseball on any other professional team under the auspices of organized baseball. Players could not change teams without permission from their current team, and without a union the players had no bargaining power. Comiskey was probably no worse than most owners. In fact, Chicago had the largest team payroll in 1919. In the era of the reserve clause, gamblers could find players on many teams looking for extra cash, and they did. 2-3. The White Sox clubhouse was divided into 2 factions. One group presented the more straight-laced players, later called the Clean Sox, a group that included players like second baseman Eddie Collins, a graduate of Columbia College of Columbia University, catcher Ray Schuck, and pitchers Red Faber and Dickie Kerr. By contemporary accounts, the 2 factions rarely spoke to each other on or off the field, and the only thing they had in common was a resentment of Comiskey. A meeting of White Sox players, including those committed to going ahead and those just ready to listen, took place on September 21, in Chick Gandal's room at the Ansonia Hotel in New York City. Buck Weaver was the only player to attend the meetings who did not receive money. Nevertheless, he was later banned with the others for knowing about the fix but not reporting it. Although he hardly played in the series, utility infielder Fred McMullen got word of the fix and threatened to report the others unless he was in on the payoff. As a small coincidence, McMullen was a former teammate of William Sleepy Bill Burns, who had a minor role in the fix. Both had played for the Los Angeles Angels of the Pacific Coast League, and Burns had previously pitched for the White Sox in 1909 and 1910. 7. Star outfielder Shoeless Joe Jackson was mentioned as a participant but did not attend the meetings, and his involvement is disputed. The scheme got an unexpected boost when the straight-laced Faber could not pitch due to a bout with the flu. Years later, Schuck said that if Faber had been available, the fix would have likely never happened, since Faber would have almost certainly started games that went instead to 2 of the alleged conspirators, pitchers Eddie Cicotte and Lefty Williams. On October 1, the day of Game 1, there were rumors amongst gamblers that the series was fixed, and a sudden influx of money being bet on Cincinnati caused the odds against them to fall rapidly. These rumors also reached the press box, where a number of correspondents, including Hugh Fullerton of the Chicago Herald and Examiner and ex-player and manager Christy Mathewson, resolved to compare notes on any plays and players that they felt were questionable. However, most fans and observers were taking the series at face value. After throwing a strike with his first pitch of the series, Cicotte's second pitch struck Cincinnati leadoff hitter Maury Rath in the back, delivering a prearranged signal confirming the players' willingness to go through with the fix. In the 4th inning, Cicotte made a bait throw to Sweet Risberg at second base. Sports writers found the unsuccessful double play to be suspicious. Williams, one of the 8 men out, lost 3 games, a series record. Rookie Dickie Kerr, who was not part of the fix, won both of his starts. But the gamblers were now reneging on their promised progress payments, to be paid after each game lost, claiming that all the money was let out on bets and was in the hands of the bookmakers. After Game 5, angry at non-payment of promised money, the players involved in the fix attempted to double-cross the gamblers, and won Games 6 and 7 of the best-of-9 series. Before Game 8, threats of violence were made on the gamblers' behalf against players and family members. Williams started Game 8, but gave up 4 straight one-out hits for 3 runs before manager Kid Gleason relieved him. The White Sox lost Game 8, and the series, on October 9, 1919. Besides Weaver, the players involved in the scandal received $5,000 each or more, equivalent to $74,000 in 2019, with Scandal taking $35,000, equivalent to $516,000 in 2019. Rumors of the fix dogged the White Sox throughout the 1920 season as they battled the Cleveland Indians for the American League pennant, and stories of corruption touched players on other clubs as well. At last, in September 1920, a grand jury was convened to investigate. Cincinnati confessed to his participation in the scam to the grand jury on September 28. On the eve of their final season series, the White Sox were in a virtual tie for first place with the Indians. The Sox would need to win all 3 of their remaining games and then hope for Cleveland to stumble, as the Indians had more games left to play than the Sox. Despite the season being on the line, Comiskey suspended the 7 White Sox still in the majors. Scandal had not returned to the team in 1920 and was playing semi-pro ball. He said that he had no choice but to suspend them, even though this action likely cost the Sox any chance of winning that year's American League pennant. The Sox lost 2 of the 3 games in the final series against the St. Louis Browns and finished in second place, 2 games behind Cleveland. The grand jury handed down its decision on October 22, 1920, and 8 players and 5 gamblers were implicated. The indictments included 9 counts of conspiracy to defraud. 13, the 10 players not implicated in the gambling scandal, as well as manager Kid Gleason, were each given bonus checks in the amount of $1,500, equivalent to $19,100 in 2019, by Comiskey in the fall of 1920, the amount equaling the difference between the winners and losers' share for participation in the 1919 World Series. The trial began on June 27, 1921 in Chicago, but was delayed by Judge Hugo Friend because 2 defendants, Ben Franklin and Carl Zork, claimed to be ill. Right fielder Shannon Collins was named as the wrong party in the indictments, accusing his corrupt teammates of having cost him $1,784 as a result of the scandal. Before the trial, key evidence went missing from the Cook County Courthouse, including the signed confessions of Cincinnati and Jackson, who subsequently recanted their confessions. Some years later, the missing confessions reappeared in the possession of Comiskey's lawyer. On July 1, the prosecution announced that former White Sox player Sleepy Bill Burns, who was under indictment for his part in the scandal, had turned state's evidence and would testify. During jury selection on July 11, several members of the current White Sox team, including manager Kid Gleason, visited the courthouse, chatting and shaking hands with the indicted ex-players. At one point they even tickled Weaver, who was known to be quite ticklish. Jury selection took several days, but on July 15, 12 jurors were finally impaneled in the case. Trial testimony began on July 18, 1921, when prosecutor Charles Gorman outlined the evidence he planned to present against the defendants. The spectators added to the bleacher appearance of the courtroom, for most of them sweltered in shirt sleeves, and callers were few. Scores of small boys jammed their way into the seats, and as Mr. Gorman told of the alleged sellout, they repeatedly looked at each other in awe, remarking under their breaths, "What do you think of that?" Or, "Well, I'll be darned." White Sox president Charles Comiskey was then called to the stand, and became so agitated with questions being posed by the defense that he rose from the witness chair and shook his fist at the defendant's counsel, Ben Short. The most explosive testimony began the following day, July 19, When Burns took the stand and admitted that members of the White Sox had intentionally fixed the 1919 World Series, Burns mentioned the involvement of Rothstein among others, and testified that Cincinnati had threatened to throw the ball clear out of the park if needed to lose a game. After additional testimony and evidence, on July 28 the defense rested and the case went to the jury. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours before returning verdicts of not guilty on all charges for all the accused players. Long before the scandal broke, many of baseball's owners had nursed long-standing grievances with the way the game was then governed by the National Commission. The scandal and the damage it caused to the game's reputation gave owners the resolve to make major changes to the governance of the sport. The owners' original plan was to appoint the widely respected federal judge and noted baseball fan Kenesaw Mountain Landis to head a reformed 3-member national commission. However, Landis made it clear to the owners that he would only accept an appointment as the game's sole commissioner, and even then only on the condition that he be granted essentially unchecked power over the sport. The owners, desperate to clean up the game's image, agreed to his terms, and vested him with virtually unlimited authority over every person in both the major and minor leagues. Upon taking office prior to the 1921 Major League Baseball season, one of Landis' first acts as commissioner was to use his new powers to place the 8 accused players on an ineligible list, a decision that effectively left them suspended indefinitely from all of organized professional baseball, although not from semi-pro barnstorming teams. Following the players' acquittals, Landis was quick to quash any prospect that he might reinstate the implicated players. On August 3, 1921, the day after the players were acquitted, the commissioner issued his own verdict. Regardless of the verdict of juries, no player who throws a ball game, no player who undertakes or promises to throw a ball game, no player who sits in confidence with a bunch of crooked ball players and gamblers, where the ways and means of throwing a game are discussed and does not promptly tell his club about it, will ever play professional baseball again. Making use of a precedent that had previously seen Babe Orton, Harl Megret, Gene Dale, and Bill Rumler banned from the Pacific Coast League for fixing games, Landis made it clear that all accused players would remain on the ineligible list, banning them from organized baseball. The commissioner took the line that while the players had been acquitted in court, there was no dispute they had broken the rules of baseball, and none of them could ever be allowed back in the game if it were to regain the trust of the public. Comiskey supported Landis by giving the 7 who remained under contract to the White Sox their unconditional release. Following the commissioner's statement, it was universally understood that all implicated White Sox players were to be banned from Major League Baseball for life. 2 other players believed to be involved were also banned. One of them was Hal Chase, who had been effectively blackballed from the majors in 1919 for a long history of throwing games and had spent 1920 in the minors. He was rumored to have been a go-between for Gandil and the Gamblers, though it has never been confirmed. Regardless of this, it was understood that Landis' announcement not only formalized his 1919 blacklisting from the majors, but barred him from the minors as well. Landis, relying upon his years of experience as a federal judge and attorney, used this case, as the founding precedent of the reorganized league, for the Commissioner of Baseball to be the highest and final authority over this organized professional sport in the United States. He established the precedent that the commissioner was invested by the league with plenary power, and the responsibility to determine the fitness or suitability of anyone, anything, or any circumstance to be associated with professional baseball, past, present, and future. 8 members of the White Sox baseball team were banned by Landis for their involvement in the fix. Arnold Rothstein, first baseman, the leader of the players who were in on the fix. He did not play in the majors in 1920, playing semi-pro ball instead. In a 1956 Sports Illustrated article, he expressed remorse for the scam, but wrote that the players had actually abandoned it when it became apparent they were going to be watched closely. According to Gandil, the players' numerous errors were a result of fear that they were being watched. Eddie Scott, pitcher, admitted involvement in the fix. Oscar Happy Fels, center fielder. Shoeless Joe Jackson, The star outfielder and one of the best hitters in the game, confessed in sworn grand jury testimony to having accepted $5,000 cash from the gamblers. It was also Jackson's sworn testimony that he never met or spoke to any of the gamblers and was only told about the fix through conversations with other White Sox players. The other players that were in on the fix informed him that he would be getting $20,000 cash divided up in equal payments after each loss. Jackson's testimony was that he played to win in the entire series and did nothing on the field to throw any of the games in any way. His roommate, pitcher Lefty Williams, brought $5,000 cash up to their hotel room after losing Game 4 in Chicago, and threw it down as they were packing to leave to travel back to Cincinnati. This was the only money that Jackson received at any time. He later recanted his confession and protested his innocence to no effect until his death in 1951. The extent of Jackson's collaboration with the scam is hotly controversial. Fred McMullen, utility infielder? McMullen would not have been included in the fix had he not overheard the other players' conversations. His role as team scout may have had more impact on the fix, since he saw minimal playing time in the series. Charles Sweet Risberg, shortstop. Risberg was Scandal's assistant and the muscle of the playing group. He went 2 for 25 at the plate and committed 4 errors in the series. George Buck Weaver, third baseman. Weaver attended the initial meetings, and while he did not go in on the fix, he knew about it. In an interview in 1956, Scandal said that it was Weaver's idea to get the money up front from the gamblers. Landis banished him on this basis, stating, "Men associating with crooks and gamblers could expect no leniency." On January 13, 1922, Weaver unsuccessfully applied for reinstatement. Like Jackson, Weaver continued to profess his innocence to successive baseball commissioners to no effect. Claude Lefty Williams, pitcher, went 0-3 with a 6.63 ERA for the series. Only one other pitcher in baseball history, reliever George Frazier of the 1981 New York Yankees, has ever lost 3 games in one World Series. The third game Williams lost was Game 8. Baseball's decision to revert to a best-of-7 series in 1922 significantly reduced the opportunity for a pitcher to obtain 3 decisions in a series. Also banned was Joe Gideon, second baseman for the St. Louis Browns. Gideon placed bets since he learned of the fix from Risberg, a friend of his. He informed Comiskey of the fix after the series in an effort to gain a reward. He was banned for life by Landis along with the 8 White Sox, and died in 1941. The indefinite suspensions imposed by Landis in relation to the scandal were the most suspensions of any duration to be simultaneously imposed until 2013. 13-player suspensions of between 50 and 211 games were announced following the doping-related biogenesis scandal.